environmental scientist with Birdlife Australia, and I'm part of our Woodland Birds program, and I'm based in the Hunter Valley. So Birdlife Australia, has anyone heard of Birdlife Australia before? Yes, of course you have, Pauline.
Come on, Dad, John.
Okay, so what we do, we're proud to be the nation's largest bird conservation organisation. We're a not-for-profit, an independent organisation, but we do get some government funding from lovely people like the Saving Our Species program and from local land services to do the work that we do to help to reduce woodland bird decline. So the aim of Birdlife is to create a bright future for Australia's birds, and we can't do it alone. So I'm an environmental scientist, but we rely on citizen scientists like children and their families and people out in the community to help us collect information about how our woodland birds are doing. And we have lots of volunteers right across Australia that help us do our work. So, as I said, I'm part of the Woodland Birds program, but there's other people like me that work on shorebirds and work on birds of prey and work on owls. But my specific area is woodland birds. So, to be able to do something, to deliver the work that we do, we have to work to a plan. So we have a woodland bird conservation action plan. So who's heard of recovery plans for other threatened species? Yeah, so there is a recovery plan for koalas, and there is a recovery plan for a whole suite of other species like squirrel gliders and things like that. But woodland birds, there's so many different types. Some eat insects, some are honey eaters, and rely on our nectar produced by our eucalypts. So we have a whole range of species. So what we've actually done is join them together into one plan, and we have some flagship species. So has anyone ever heard that term flagship before? Anyone have a guess of what that might mean? No? Okay, well I'll show you our two flagship species. So two very beautiful birds. The Regent Honeyeater up the top left. Anyone heard of Regent Honeyeater before? Very good. Yay, I'm glad some people starting to hear about the Regent Honeyeater. And the Swiss parrot. Yes, Swiss parrot? Great. Okay, so these are two very special birds that do occur in the Hunter Valley, and they're critically endangered. So does anyone know, once you get to critically endangered, what is the next thing that's going to happen? Extinct, exactly. So these guys are in real trouble. We only think that there's about 250 Regent Honeyeaters left in the wild, and perhaps around 500 Swiss parrots across their whole range. And both of them are nomadic or migratory species, so they're never sort of really in any one area for a particular length of time. They might just be there while flowering gum trees are producing the fruit that they, or the nectar that they like to eat. So a flagship species is an ambassador for a type of habitat or for a specific environmental cause. So can anyone think of what might be a flagship species for climate change and the melting ice caps? What would you use as your species if you were trying to look at global warming and the melting polar ice caps? Exactly, polar bears and penguins, exactly. What about your school that was looking at a proposal that was going to cut down gum trees? What would your flagship species be for that? Koalas, exactly. So, creative koalas. The time that I became involved in creative koalas was because I was asked to go out to this beautiful school, Westford Public School. It's not too far up the road here, and they've got about 80 students. So I do a lot of talks at smaller schools. I don't know exactly why, but it just tends to be where I end up. And a lot of the schools that are within the Regent Honeyeater range are often small schools. So this school that I went to, they participated in Creative Koalas in Term 2 in 2019. So this is Maggie and Cadence, they were Year 3 students. And it's a bit hard to see here, but they've actually done beautiful artworks of the Swift parrot and the Regent Honeyeater. And this was their creative koala that they designed with their school. So I was just going to tell you the couple of things that they did. So they obviously did biodiversity and threatened species as one of their key topics. And so they looked at the global problem we have of threatened species declines, but then they worked out how they could actually act on that at a local level within their community. So they did things like plant trees. So they're actually talking about partnerships and working with your community champions. They worked with Landcare and they planted some trees, which I believe are actually in the Tocal grounds. Then they looked at building native animal shelters, so they did things like nest boxes, building frog ponds and habitat for reptiles. They made educational posters on feral animals to make people aware in their community about the impact of feral animals on threatened species. They even got some camera traps. They put out some remote cameras and looked at endangered animals that they potentially had in their local area. They're right near the river, so it was good that they had a natural area that they could take the kids on excursions to. And they made an educational video about endangered animals, and that went on to win the best animation at the Kreative Koalas award ceremony. So I was amazed at what they had achieved. When I came in term 3, they'd already done all of term 2, so they'd painted their koala, they'd done all of these things, they'd written a poem about endangered animals. It was just really exciting to see what they've done. So I just thought I'd quickly share some of the work that we do on a threatened species, which is the Regent honeyeater. So things like we can save and repair Regent honeyeater habitat by tree planting. We can also encourage farmers to, if they have some bushland that's suitable for Regent honeyeaters and other threatened woodland birds, they can conserve that habitat on their land through something called a conservation agreement. So I work with landholders to do that type of work. And as I was saying, a lot of our threatened species have favourite foods. So gum trees, of course, gum leaves for koalas. Regent honeyeaters and swift parrots are very fussy with the types of eucalypts that they like to eat as well. So I can give you some advice about what plants that you could actually plant in your school grounds to encourage different birds to come to your school and increase the biodiversity of your school. Things like mistletoe, I can tell you about mistletoe, and that mistletoe is native, and people, really need to embrace mistletoe as being a fabulous resource for all of our woodland birds. We've got the Regent honeyeater here feeding on the nectar, nesting up the top there in the mistletoe structure that it provides, and then relying on that resource to then fuel themselves to be able to feed their young down the bottom. So all of these things are interrelated and important parts of the ecosystem. I'm actually working on a project at the moment where we're planting mistletoe, so I can talk to you about different revegetation techniques and about how we can work with all sorts of people like bush regenerators and arborists to do this type of work. I can come and talk to you about studying threatened species, about doing bird surveys in your school grounds to learn about the biodiversity in your school, and to teach you how to be a citizen scientist and use some of the tools that we have, like apps that we can actually enter the data about your school's bird life in, that then helps me do the work that I do. I'll give you a little bit of an idea about how we work with Taronga Zoo to breed birds like the Regent honeyeater in captivity and then release them back into the wild to boost the populations that are there in the wild and hopefully get their numbers back up again. So this is where we actually released Regent honeyeaters in the Hunter Valley. It's the first time that we've done that in New South Wales last year. So this was out on a private property. A local landholder was happy to release the Regent honeyeaters back into their habitat on his property. And the Regent honeyeaters are over in those tents in the background, and this is all the media and all of the local people that came to watch. And these are some of the captive birds that were waiting in the tents to be released. And they've got little colour bands on their legs so that if we saw them again after they were released, we could tell which bird was what. So I can, talk to students about monitoring and how important monitoring is and collection of data. These are some people that monitored the Regent honeyeaters that had radio transmitters on their backs for 12 weeks afterwards to see where they went. And another thing that I really enjoy about my job is actually coming to talk to students and telling them how they can help. So I can, present talks, and then I can also do things like television, radio, and newspaper articles to get the message out there about our threatened species. So things that you can do, you can look out for the Regent honeyeater and the swift parrot now that you know what they look like. You can tell me if you find one, and I can tell everybody that I know, and we'll go and see if there's any more there. You can do a woodland bird survey with your friends. So Birdlife has a couple of different apps. There's Birds in Backyards and there's our Bird Data app. And then there's something that comes up once a year that everybody in Australia can participate in. You can do a 20-minute bird count in your own backyard, or you can do it as a school. You can work in groups or something like that, and you can do a survey in October. And all of that data will come together to show us what are the most common species in our local areas, and you can actually look at that data live as that survey progresses through that week period. So, if I can come out and I can teach you about how to do a backyard bird count or the Aussie backyard bird surveys, you're welcome to ask me to come and do that for you. I can give you some advice about planting a bird-friendly garden in your school and looking at what species you can possibly attract into your school grounds. So this is just some photos you're going out to talk to students. The other thing I can do, local land services have a big bag of binoculars. I can bring them out to the school. We can go out in your school grounds, learn how to use binoculars and learn how to do a bird list.